time for a change lately. That makes me smile at myself. Good morning and welcome to the Eclectic Radical. As always, I'm Chris Richards, the Eclectic Radical. With me this morning is my Twitter correspondent, Vanessa Wililko, who is here to talk with me about the things in the media we can't avoid that are hanging over all our heads, like the whole Charlie Kirk fiasco, but also with, media literacy in general, how journalists foreshadow things that then appear to happen, and how consent gets manufactured for a lot of ridiculous bullshit. And on that note, Vanessa, good morning, and please introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Vanessa Wililko. I work in public relations. I also have a background in social science research. So I find it fascinating because we got connected because I posted this media query that came in. So part of my job is monitoring several different services where journalists post ideas and they're looking for experts. And this one just sent me over the edge, and I finally posted something on Twitter because I've been collecting, as I mentioned, screenshots for years at this point. And this story about like Bill Hader saying that his shingles was caused by anxiety, and then looking for an infectious disease expert to basically back this up and say like, hey, can shingles be caused by anxiety?
And let's think about this. This is a story that's being pushed because a celebrity said something.
Okay, so let's get into how much of media, legacy media, is really informed and directed now by social media, right?
Yes.
So if somebody saw that Instagram reel, they probably didn't even watch the show. They just saw the Instagram reel. And suddenly that got viral. People in the comments are talking about it. And then you have these other outlets. They're chasing the virality of these clips. And so, because they're trying to get clicks and views. I get it, right? Like the legacy media has basically collapsed. We can get into that. But so they're chasing the views. And because so many people are immunocompromised now because of multiple COVID infections, and potentially had shingles very early, they're looking for reasons, right? So it's kind of this interesting mix of like the media is chasing the social media clout, and they're pandering to an audience that wants to think that like their brain is broken rather than their body is broken.
Yes.
And so everybody's kind of colluding in this, like, oh, we'll just act like it's anxiety. And that the reason I posted that one is because having friends with long COVID, having been medically gaslit for most of my life, because I have weird, complex chronic illnesses that don't necessarily show up on the standard tests, it's so dangerous to watch, people who are immunocompromised or dealing with chronic illness. It all just gets psychologized. It's just stress. It's just anxiety. Like, can those contribute? Yes. But to default to that instead of looking at the physical causes is so dangerous.
And I want to break in here and say that as someone who suffers from anxiety, I also want to note that anxiety itself is a physical illness and not just some psychosomatic stress issue. What we call anxiety is when the stress that your mind and body undergo causes physical illness.
Exactly. Especially, like I said, one of my best friends has long COVID and was one of the original long haulers, right? She got infected probably December 2019. And because nobody knew what COVID was, nobody knew what was happening to her body, right? These cascading medical issues. And I bring this up because of her, I've done all this research on the vagus nerve. And if your vagus nerve is inflamed, which can happen from stress, from anxiety, that can also cause these cascading issues in your body, right? It's like, it's physical to act, to your point, to act like, oh, it's just in your head or it's just your brain chemistry. No, you're having a physiological reaction. And again, maybe something else is going on, and we should talk about what physically potentially there is rather than, yeah.
And for people who don't understand viral, I always mess up the name, but for people who don't understand viral persistence, shingles is very specifically caused by the leftover chickenpox virus if you have suffered chickenpox and not completely defeated the infection when you were sick. And you have leftover chickenpox virus just sort of lying in wait in your body, waiting to become shingles.
It's so fascinating to me that people aren't putting those two together, or again, not drawing those parallels with
They
COVID.
used to even say that literally in the commercial for the shingles vaccine. You remember how those commercials explained how chickenpox causes shingles later in life?
Yes. And for some reason, we've just decided that it's just chickenpox or not, right? But we haven't drawn any other parallels to any other viruses. And like, there have been so many studies that have come out, even in the past year, linking just like regular cold viruses or coronaviruses to dementia later in life, to Alzheimer's, or linking the 1918 flu with a spate of heart disease, 50, 60 years later. We're taught that being infected with bacteria and pathogens, right, viruses, is good for the immune system. I was raised to believe that. And like, that is just, and I mean, I remember one of the first times I was gaslit because I got a memory for being mad. I was 12 and I was getting sick all the time, just like cold after cold after cold. And I was talking to this pediatrician, not mine, whom I adored, someone else in the practice. And she's like, well, kids get like 9 to 12 viral infections every year. And I said, that's not happening though. I'm the only one getting sick all the time. Like, and I'm getting sick for longer. And she basically treated me like I was crazy because, oh, you're just a kid, you don't know. And I'm like, no, I have really good pattern recognition.
Well, the just a kid thing has always really bothered me because it's not like kids are blind or stupid or don't understand what's going on. People act like kids are pets sometimes, and it's not like that.
It's so dangerous because like kids are really this kind of underclass
Yes.
that we don't talk about it. Like the number of people, one of my college professors pointed this out, and of course I've been thinking about it ever since, about how people can openly say, oh, I hate kids.
Yes.
And if you put any other marginalized group in there,
kids and disabled people are the two groups you can always openly complain about and never really get backlash.
So, totally, right? And it's such a good indication of like who we see, who are people and who are not people, right? And that in all sort, like, again, my eyes have been opened, especially with COVID, like seeing all of this. It's like, oh, you've just decided that vulnerable people are not actually people. So you don't have to do anything to take care of them. You don't have to consider them in any of your
the vulnerable will fall by the wayside that Fauci was going on. That was basically Action T4 stuff while Biden was president. We talk about fascism under Trump all the time, but they're talking about Action T4 stuff, letting disabled people die while Biden was president.
Oh, openly, right? Like on
yes.
It's like, oh yeah, of course. And the number of people who are like nodding their heads to this. And it's such a weird thing. I mean, the weird politicizing of all of this, right? The idea of making public health this political thing. So if there's a blue president, right? Oh, well, it's just public health. We don't have to worry about it. But no, like you said, it's Action T4 stuff. Like we've heard this rhetoric before. It's dangerous no matter who is saying it.
Well, I mean, people forget that there are laws still on the books in the state of California, fortunately not enforced, but there are laws still on the books in the state of California that Hitler used to base his eugenics laws on. They actually banned, because it was such a big problem, even after it stopped being a policy, they actually banned involuntary sterilization of female prisoners in the California prison system. And yet still every few years, there's a big scandal about a prisoner being sterilized without her consent.
Oh my God. Again, this was in college, one of my women's studies courses. And it was, God, I'm going to forget the name of it now, but it was a documentary about forced sterilization in Puerto Rico, where this was just kind of the standard thing that they were doing. Like you had 1 or 2 kids and like doctors would just go in and snip women's reproductive systems and
Yeah.
without them knowing, right? And then
Yeah.
they're trying to conceive later and they suddenly find out that they've been forcibly sterilized.
Yeah.
And again, not 100 years ago, not 200 years ago. This is like 50 years ago, less, right?
Well, the most recent scandal about a forced sterilization in the California prison system was in 2020, not too long after the scandal about the doctor that was hired under Obama and who had been doing forced sterilizations in the ICE system since Obama was president and got caught under Trump.
Yeah. Again, people, I don't understand. There's a huge section of the population that when like their person is in power, they just don't pay attention to anything. Like, oh, well, they're brown.
Everything must be fine because my team is in charge.
That's it. Exactly. Well, the people who this is happening to, they must deserve it because my team is just, right? The others are a bunch of liars and frauds, but my team always does the right thing. It's and again, it just paves the way for things to get worse when the other team
and the media loves to feed into the idea of whether or not people deserve what's happening to them or whether or not people deserve to be helped. The media loves that.
Yes, because it's easier. It's easier when the person on screen who is being brutalized. Oh, well, again, to me, the parallel is with like, oh, but when somebody gets sick or dies because of COVID, oh, did they have a pre-existing condition?
Yes.
Like somehow deserve it.
Did they have a pre-existing condition is up there with, well, did he obey the police and what was she wearing?
Yes, exactly, right? Like the level and the amount of victim blaming that happens just on the daily in our society. And I think it's because people are scared of being vulnerable and they're scared of being perceived as vulnerable, right?
The two groups, kids are always oppressed, but usually we don't actively war on our kids. We usually kill our kids while actively warring on other groups.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like our society has made an all-out decision. This has always been there. RFK Jr. is not a new person. He became huge again because of COVID, but he's been around for a long time.
Yes.
You actually saw, she appears to have been backing off of some of that, but you actually saw some people like Jenny McCarthy actually finally disavow Bobby Kennedy Jr. during the COVID shit.
Yes.
Which was just amazing. I couldn't believe she did that. I was like, I'm so proud of Jenny.
I know. Some people evolve, right? In tiny ways, at least.
But it's like, but I mean, one of the things that annoyed me for years is people ignored how Bill Maher and Ariana Huffington were essentially RFK Jr. worshipers.
It's such a wild thing to me when people are like vaguely your team, right?
Yes.
Just excuse all of this. And especially with like Bill Maher, the fact that he was he's always been like that. Maybe not as like vocal, but he's always been that way. And the number of people who either excused it or still watched his show.
What was the name of his show on Comedy Central? And what does the term politically incorrect usually apply about the people using it?
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's so wild the number of people who like are constantly telegraphing who they are and what they believe. But people want to believe that again, this is my guy. He's on my team. We have vaguely the same politics, and he's.
It's Bill Maher's fault. It's Bill Maher's fault that Joe Scarborough is on MSNBC, and it's Joe Scarborough's fault that Donald Trump became president. So it's Bill Maher's fault that Donald Trump became president.
Got another reason to hate him. I'm fine with that.
But I mean, you look at the logic like that. I mean, it's reductionist. I know you can't actually make it one person's fault like that. There's all sorts of other forces going on. But at the same time, Joe Scarborough became a celebrity as opposed to just another congressman because he was on Bill Maher's show almost every week.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was what got him on MSNBC. And it was him platforming Donald Trump on MSNBC that caused Donald Trump to really start taking off in the polls.
This is the thing about public relations that has really opened my eyes to media, because it's just about getting somebody, in my case, a client, in the media enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of creates this, like, there was this one client, I won't dox them, but like we had gotten them in the media enough for their subject interest that journalists started reaching out to us, right? So this is somebody who was just running their organization, very competent, very qualified, but like nobody knew who they were. But you get in Time, you get in Newsweek, you get in whatever, and suddenly journalists are reaching out to you. Now, in my case, thankfully, good organization, good CEO, right? Like doing good work. But in these cases, now, right?
Should we be worried about journalists with PR backgrounds then?
Yeah, probably.
The reason I ask is because Jake Tapper, his first job was as some like junior assistant on somebody's political campaign, and after working in politics, he came out of politics to immediately go to work for the big PR firm, the big Beltway PR firm that was founded by a Republican and a Democrat ex-congressman, and has been like the biggest PR firm in the country ever since. I wish I could remember the name right now, but I'm sure you know who I mean.
Yes,
Jake Tapper worked for them. He got into the media as a journalist, doing op-eds that were essentially paid PR work for clients of this firm that were getting put into the media because this PR firm had juice, so they could put their guy in the media as an op-ed writer. And suddenly he's a journalist.
Oh my God. This is, I didn't even know that whole story, but I shouldn't be surprised, right? Because again, especially with PR, if you have enough money and if you have enough clout, you can get placed anywhere, right? Like my example of this is Drew Barrymore, who wanted to scab during the strike, right?
Yes.
And then got a whole ton of bad PR off of that, ton of it. All of a sudden, like 6 months later, she's everywhere. Like she's doing stuff with the WWE, but she's also doing stuff with Etsy. And she like what? And me with a PR background, I was like, oh boy, some big firm is like you said, juice, right? Like,
well, there are two things. One, obviously, like you're saying, juice, she's working to clean up. But second, she's being rewarded for wanting to scab during the strike.
That's exactly it. Yes. 100%, 100%. But yeah, especially like I said, it was WWE and Etsy. I'm like, I smell money buying this. Coordinated.
And Etsy, oh my gosh, Etsy. Etsy is one of these people quietly doing bad things while everybody who uses the platform is kind of locked in because there aren't a lot of other choices.
That's exactly. I mean, this again, I'm a jewelry designer, right? I used to be like a ton, and it's rough. Like they started out as kind of like the good company, right? And
yes,
that way, and then now like the number of buy sell.
Haven't all of these? I mean, now we're going off topic, but still, haven't all of these tech companies that are really about leveraging somebody else's labor for less money than it really costs? Didn't they all start out as the good company? I mean, Google's motto was "Don't be evil," and now they're the most evil company in the world. Elon Musk was a liberal icon who wanted to save us from global warming, and now he's the most scary fascist in the world. Larry Ellison, who just recently briefly eclipsed him and then went back to being number 2 as richest man in the world. Larry Ellison was supposedly this big liberal donor who cared so much about civil rights and making the world a better place. And now it turns out all his money has gone into all these evil tech lobby groups.
Yeah.
So it's like there are no good companies. That's always a lie. And the more they try to sell themselves as a good company, the worse they are. Robinhood being one of the best examples.
Yes. Yeah. It's hard because again, we're all so wrapped up in capitalism that we can't see anything outside of it. So we always want to believe that there's a good billionaire or a good company or a good corporation, whatever. But the whole system is based on exploitation. So what are
Yeah.
you ultimately going to get out of it? Just more exploitation. Some hide it better, right? And sometimes I do think some of these companies are founded by or started by people who have some good intentions, right? But eventually the pull of capital is so great, you're just willing to do
So
whatever it takes to
I
get
I
more.
really believe I really believe that the 18th century absolute monarchs who pushed enlightened despotism really did want to make everybody's lives better. You can see by watching public policy how Frederick the Great tried to make the lives of ordinary Prussians better. But he was still the fucking absolute monarch.
That's it.
And that was still a problem.
Yeah.
And as part of trying to make his subjects' lives better, he got his country involved in 15 years of horrible war that wrecked its economy and destroyed its population base. So, good intentions.
Again, like you're known by the fruits of your labor, right? Like what has actually happened with what you've done, right? Like Etsy initially, like I said, and I was on it like in the early, mid 2000s.
One of my best oldest friends on the internet was
Yeah.
was a pin maker. She was one of the people doing the slutty pins on Etsy when that was a big thing before Etsy decided to be one of the first people to jump on the porn ban shit.
Yep.
She was fired as an Etsy user with no warning whatsoever when her stuff wasn't even that explicit. It was just sort of, flirty off color, not dirty.
Yeah.
And boom, gone. Her whole business destroyed because Etsy decided they didn't like sexy stuff.
I have heard that so many times, and it's not just that. Some people who sell like tarot readings and things like that, like also because again, Etsy will just decide they're done with you, and then that's
you look at the way the media pushes these porn ban ideas as somehow a good thing that protects people. But what it actually is a way to give these companies more power to just throw people off their platform for no reason.
Exactly that. It's again, it's so dangerous. It gets so dangerous so quickly. And I think so many people, they only think, am I affected or not? Right. Well, I'm not making off-color pins, so who cares? And it's like, you're next. Like these control apparatuses, they don't stop. They continue, right?
Well, the best example I can think of ever is that there was a big moral panic about porn in the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of that big moral panic about porn, serious liberal feminists like Andrea Dworkin engaged with Ronald Reagan's Justice Department to try to come up with a porn ban that would protect children and women from the horrible pornography on our supermarket newsstands. And the list that they came up with banned all sorts of actual porn, but also would have banned things like The Advocate, because it's a pro-gay magazine that talked about sexual health.
Yeah.
It would have banned medical magazines that talked about sex education.
Yeah.
All this stuff would have been classified as porn. And everybody who was supporting it was just blindly going, porn bad, and not really looking at the contents of the bill.
Again, the number of times that these kinds of things happen, right? Especially because porn, I think a lot of people have in their head like what porn means, right? Or they think, but really porn has been weaponized to get rid of things that people don't like, right? You can classify anything as porn, and that just becomes this wedge in order to like
I
get
remember when I'm again 80s. I remember when there was people were calling Madonna videos pornographic.
Yes, right. Yes. Yeah, like that was salacious, you know? People
It
don't
was salacious. I mean, it was definitely salacious, but it was not. But I mean, if you go by the Supreme Court justice's definition of pornography, well, I can't really define it. I know it when I see it. Then that wasn't pornography. I know because I saw it.
Yes, right, right. I know it's a lot of these things. It's so funny because like to talk at the start about how like nobody respects kids, right? And
Yes.
then but then kids get used as this wedge issue for politics.
Yes.
Well, we have to
Look at
protect
the
our
cell phone ban now.
that is the
And the
one
way
of
the
the
media is pushing that cell phone ban is a good thing that will somehow muzzle big tech when big tech is pushing the cell phone ban to not have to be responsible for what kids see because now kids can't have cell phones in school.
exactly, exactly. It's one of those things where I truly do think that most people hate kids, especially parents. They hate their kids. They are not they had some idea of what it was like to have children, and the reality is very different. And they don't want to raise their kids. And so then they're looking for all of these structural issues, right? These structural supports to prevent them from actually having to like engage with their children, right? Like again, to me, the whole back to school thing in the middle of the pandemic, open the schools. We got to get kids back in school. It's like, I get it. You hate your children. And you didn't realize that until you had to spend 24 hours a day with them. You hate your
I
children.
think it. I don't think that people deliberately and actively and consciously hate their children. I'm going to bend over backwards to be fair. But I will say that people believe that they have a right to own their children.
That's huge.
And
yeah.
their children are their property.
Yes.
And it is their right to program their children to be what they want them to be.
Yes.
And that anybody else trying to educate their child in any way they don't approve of is a dangerous threat to society who must be crushed in order to protect parents' ownership of their children.
Pete, I will 100% agree with you there. So many parents are not interested in their kids having agency, in developing their own personalities and being their own people, right? That's why they're threatened by the internet.
The number one fear of the average heteronormative middle-aged white parent is that their efforts to teach their kid to be racist and homophobic so they'll be a good straight white member of society will be undermined by the school system and the entertainment industry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I also think about, going back to this, like, what is porn, right? And what ends up getting banned, that there are multiple books that are banned that are trying to talk to kids at a kid level about what it means when you're being abused, right? When you're being sexually abused. And God forbid any of those kids actually figure out that, like, oh, wait, what's happening to me at home is abuse, like, and should not be happening.
And this is part of the ownership thing again, because if you really, really look at a lot of our laws about abuse, the way the system is set up is so only the parents and people the parents approve of can abuse their children.
Well, 100%. All right. So my background, like I said, social science research, and it was specifically looking at child abuse and domestic violence, right? And again, two instances where you have groups of people who treat somebody like an object that's theirs that they get to control. And God forbid they do anything to actually be a person, right? Like these environments.
I am tremendously interested in social science, the social sciences in their original Marxist orientation as communicated by Durkheim, of course, and the guy who wrote The Leisure Class, Thorstein Veblen. I hate the way I blank on names sometimes.
Totally fine.
But I mean, I love that even more than Marxist politics. We need Marxist social science again.
We need social
Yeah.
sciences. We need so much that is divested from just supporting and reinforcing
Well,
capital, right?
and the whole idea, we have this idea that things like education or social science is supposed to be, quote, non-political, when the whole point is we need radical education in order to fix problems instead of going on the way things are.
It makes me furious when people are like, I want this to be non-political. And the call for
Yeah.
being political means that you just support the current political order. And that is inherently a political position. Like, get
Well,
over
this,
yourself.
the idea that anything should be non-political is essentially saying, okay, we can this is so political we can't talk about it.
That I again, de Tocqueville, right? Like who was writing about like freedom in America, right?
Yes.
He's like, and he initially he comes here and he's like, oh my God, it's amazing. People think all these different things, and then he's here for a while and he goes back and he's like, actually, no, you have like, let's say you have 100 things that you can talk
Mhm.
about, and that feels like freedom because you can talk about 100 different things. But if you talk about something outside of it, that you get shunned, people shut down, like they don't want to have those conversations because your freedom is very clearly not free. It's very limited.
There are all of the guardrails on freedom set by the ruling class.
Yes.
Are and our whole the whole history of liberal reform is moving the guardrails wider a little and then fighting against them, contracting again, and not even being able to widen them anymore.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. It's so again, I think about with COVID, right? Where people were working from home, people had way more freedom. And then this like push to go back to normal. It's like none of you need to be working in an office. We already figured that out. Like, but that control, like, wait, no, we need control over you again. God forbid we have you out in the streets. God forbid we have you like questioning
To
any
be
of our decisions.
to be fair, lots and lots of employers really saw what a good break work from home actually was for the employer. And that was the problem because there were all these office buildings losing lots of money because
Right.
because people aren't coming into the office and paying as much rent for as much space.
Yes.
I can tell you from my experience, my workplace made a deliberate decision initially because of COVID, but ultimately they decided to make it permanent in order to save office space. They made a deliberate decision to have people work 1 week at the office and 1 week at home in every department they could get away with it.
Yeah.
And so they would have different people in the office at different times and were able to go from 2 buildings to 1 building and cut their use of commercial real estate in half. Well, that means the landlord's losing money.
Yeah. That again, it's the number of the number of things in our life that are controlled by people with way more money than we can even conceive of, right? And then
Yeah.
that's for
And
like
just
it's forced upon us, and we're oh you have to do that. It's like for whom? Like who is this benefiting? Not me.
and who are the richest people in the world? Essentially, they're landlords. They're people who own stock in corporations
Yep.
and just collect rent on that stock or borrow against the value of that stock,
That's it. Yeah.
just like landlords.
Yeah, right, right. It's people who just have capital and don't work. Like, and just because their work is extracting.
Their work is extracting actual value from people in return for the use of the capital.
Yes.
It's like the Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen and these folks who are having such control of our politics now, and those parties they're venture capitalists. They're people who put up money for other people to start companies and who expect to collect rent off those companies.
Yeah, exactly. 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 And again, people who have no value for human life because their entire
And,
way of operating is about extraction, right?
and if
Humans have batteries to
you look
extract.
at the media that's failed, Gawker,
Yeah. Hmm.
yes, did some trashy tabloid stuff, but they also were like one of the only 2 or 3 websites that were reporting on venture capital and tech startups.
Exactly.
The others were Vice and a third one that I can't remember right now, but they've all failed since.
Yeah. Yeah. We shouldn't think
And the
that's a
fact that
surprise.
they've all failed since and come back in heavily emasculated, I hate to be misogynist about in my metaphor there, but in emasculated ways where they can no longer function as designed.
Yes. Yes. Again. So I like, one of the things that I did want to talk about is this idea of like, again, this glimpse that I have now into media, because so many of these outlets, they don't have funding anymore. When you
Nope.
like journalism used to be a career, and you would get a
Yeah.
salary, and you would be working for typically a smaller outlet. Now, a lot of these small newspapers, they've folded, right? A lot of local journalism has just imploded. And a lot of the bigger outlets, like, they're not paying salaries anymore. It's all freelance, right? So you have these journalists who are on this like desperate quest to get as much work as possible and just
Yes.
like churn things out, right? Because they need to be able to make rent.
And you were talking about how they follow social media trends. And
This,
and
yeah,
there's a reason it developed this way. There's a reason it developed this way. And you used to be able to see it on Twitter, where independent media would break a story.
yes,
And the story would be all over Twitter and would be really heavily shared in one specific group and would start to trend as independent media.
yes,
And then after a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, you would see the mainstream media pick it up and report on it, ignoring that it had already been happening in the independent media as
yes,
if it was new.
yes,
The Tara Reid was sexually harassed story started like that in independent media and then blew up in mainstream media.
yes,
Lots of stuff like that. It would start out in some small outlet, and then it would be picked up by somebody like Vice or The Intercept. And
yes,
then a few weeks later, it would be in mainstream media. And
yes,
mainstream media got lazy because they were able to build off the work of independent media like this. But
yes,
now all that independent media has basically been killed by the
that,
changes in the way Twitter works.
yeah,
I blame Elon Musk mostly, but some of the changes were already starting before the buyout, and you could see them then. But
yes,
now, all this independent media that legacy media used to be building on to do its work isn't trending anymore.
yes, yes,
I cannot tell you how much my business model has been hurt by the way
yeah.
that media has changed and Twitter has changed.
Well, and it's that, so you, like you said, there's cratering, right? So you have these like independent outlets or more well-known outlets, like you said, like Gawker, who's a little more, tabloid, but actually doing reporting, and then they get targeted, right? And once they've dealt with like multiple targeting, like they're not going to do these hard-hitting pieces anymore. And also, again, things have shifted because of this, again, because so many news outlets, like their budgets have been annihilated, right? And so they're just kind of trying to do whatever to stay afloat, because again, the print model is cratering, like it has cratered, I should say. Like they're not able to have the same revenue streams anymore with advertising. So what are they doing? They're chasing viral moments on social media in
Yeah.
order to get clicks. Like
Yeah.
the perfect example, there was something that came in. It was a Newsweek query, and it was specifically asking about this TikTok trend called fluffy popcorn, which is about like popcorn that with raw cake batter on it or raw cookie batter on it, and how that became a trend. And like I worked with a food safety organization, and I thankfully, it was either like cake batter or like sometimes raw flour. Raw flour is actually more dangerous in terms of salmonella contamination.
Yeah.
Eggs, right? So I immediately, thankfully, we had like a bank of quotes. And so I just pulled some of like old quotes we'd used about like hemolytic uremic syndrome, and how you can be disabled for the rest of your life with one bad salmonella infection.
Yeah.
But this is Newsweek, right? It was only online, not in print, but like Newsweek. Again, I like was born in '83. Newsweek
And and a lot of these trend stories, a lot of these, this is the latest trend stories are bullshit in the first place.
This is, oh my God. Well, also, okay, so there is, I won't
I know this because I follow actual tech and internet journalists who report on these things, and they're like, no, this isn't happening.
That's another thing. Okay, so another perfect example. I won't.
The Tide Pod challenge, that was completely fake bullshit, made up story that went viral on social media.
It's one of those things where, again, people who aren't chronically online don't know how to identify. Like, how to identify, okay, this is a made up thing to like get people riled up. And then, oh, we're all going to talk about it. You know, it's kind of like the thing I loved, like the Grimace Shake videos, like meme culture I find fascinating. But like when like people started turning it, like the Grimace Shake into like little horror shorts essentially on TikTok. And then people were like, oh, I'm going to do this. And so there was a slew of it. Incredible, right? On the other hand, you can have people who are like, well, we're doing a Tide Pod challenge. And then some people, again, hysterics, think it's real. And like, oh my God, these kids on social media, it's like they're more media savvy than you are because they're manipulating their social media platforms.
It's the whole, I mean, somebody said just the other day when talking about how hard it is for reporters who don't understand the media to understand the alleged memes being used allegedly by the alleged assassin of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's like they're saying this means this because of this, and people who are actually fluent in internet say no, this is this, this is this, this is this.
I had two different friends reached out to me and they're like, do you know what a groiper is? And I was like, how much time do you have? Because I have to explain multiple levels of internet culture to you because these are not online people, right? At all. And so I'm like, where do I even start? I'm like translating a language to you, you know, like it's just such a fascinating thing. But so again, this idea of like making things up, there's this one outlet, I won't get into it, it's a legacy outlet. They are constantly posting media queries looking for professionals to respond to am I the asshole subreddit posts. And immediately I'm like, you don't even know that this is real. You don't know that this is a real story. Anybody could be posting. You can't follow. Are you DMing the person to make sure they're a real person?
Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole Reddit posts do sometimes have a penthouse forum feel to them. It's true.
Yes. Yes.
For those of you who are not familiar with porn, the Penthouse Forum was where people sent in their real life sexy stories, which were frequently fictional.
Yes, right. And so it
was a way for aspiring erotic writers to get some practice.
That's also true, exactly. And get published, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I see this stuff. And again, it's like people who aren't online who don't, I think, understand these subcultures and like how it, you know, like you said, it's some of it is fiction practice or like the Tide Pod thing. It's like, can I make this sound realistic enough to go viral and get a bunch of responses to it? Right. Like I don't think people understand how savvy very online people are at manipulating online culture because they're so steeped in it. Right. Well, and so
there's a whole thing. Oh my gosh. And you know, I almost hate to talk about this, but it's out there too. And you know, it's going to influence the culture. There's this whole porn subculture that's this very deeply ironic thing where conservative men writing as liberal women do these horrible things about how liberal women are all in lust with Trump supporters. Yeah. But it's so ridiculous, and it's so ridiculously fake, except you can spot the real people who have gotten sucked into this ridiculously fake thing by the way they say stuff. And it's like, I don't want to read this, but I feel like I need to read this because this is important to the way things are going to develop in a year or two.
Oh, yeah. Again, these online trend, like to your point about Twitter, like for the longest time, I loved it because people would come to me with like a news story once it hit mainstream. And I was like, I heard about that months ago. Like it used to be the point, like where you would just find things out and you would know before everybody else.
Yes.
Similarly, like you said, with there's certain like parts of the internet, you're like, oh, this is going to hit in like a year or two. You just know because of the way it's structured, the way the society's going. You're like, oh, this is I hate this, but I have to pay attention to
I watched this and there was a little bit of it in 2020.
Yeah.
And in 2020, of course, the Democrats won. And then after 2020, there started being so much more of it. And then in 2024, the Republicans win. And it's like, is there a relation between the way white women vote and this weird Reddit porn about fascism?
Yeah. It's again, I think it's this weird thing where people kind of treat internet culture as somehow nothing and the most important thing, right? I find it so fascinating where it's just like frivolous stuff that
get offline, touch grass. You've been online too long.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't know anything about the real world anymore.
Exactly. But then simultaneously, like again with like the cell phone bans and things like this. Well, yep. The internet is also the most dangerous thing in the universe, and we have to protect our children from it. And it's just like, okay, decide. Either it has power or it has no power, right? Again, similarly, it's kind of how people talk about like people with long COVID or chronically ill people who are on Twitter. They are somehow the weakest, most inconsequential people ever, and also like determining elections and things like that. It's like, babe, decide which one, because it's not both. I promise it's not both. Like, yeah.
And that's the way people talk about COVID consciousness, both individually and in the media, is just, and you can see the way that people's personal prejudices reflect their reporting. Dave Weigel, I will call him out, I don't care. Dave Weigel, big mainstream reporter, considered liberal to left-leaning, accused not just long COVID, but by extension, everybody collecting disability from the federal government of being a malingerer.
Malingerers, yeah.
And yet people wonder when these important quote unquote liberal journalists are publicly speculating about whether disabled people are malingering, why people are suddenly cutting disability in Washington. Well, you know, people like Dave Weigel are saying disabled people are malingering. They don't deserve this.
Yes. Yeah, and again, this is why I got so mad specifically about that query that was linking shingles to anxiety, right?
Yes.
Because if you're a malingerer, there's just, oh, you're just pretending, right? Or you're just anxious, or you're just depressed. Like, figure your shit out. Stop trying to pretend.
Depression, again, is a physical illness that is caused by brain chemistry manifesting physical symptoms in your body. Yes. All this whole false, it's this stupid Descartes shit. This ancient Greece logos versus matter. Yes. This stupid mind-body duality that somehow says the brain has nothing to do with the body and works on some magical plane removed from physical processes, and things that happen in your mind are not physical at all. And it's like, no, everything that happens in your brain is happening because of physical processes that happen in your brain.
Yes.
Mental illness is a physical process, not just somebody being weird.
Yes, but unfortunately, again, you have people with big platforms.
Yes.
Want to just act like people are just being weird. Why don't you get over it, right? Like, it's this idea that people are being childish, or they're being, or what, again, the malingerer, right? Like, oh, well, there's something wrong with you. Or again, but like, there's something morally wrong with you, right? Because if you could just suck it up, you wouldn't have to be on disability. You could go out and work like the rest of us. And like, again, a lot of that conversation too, I think, is like punishing people, right? Because it's like, you're so bought into this system that you feel like everybody needs to be doing it. And so when somebody physically can't, and you have to say like, oh, they're just, it's in their head, because you're so bought into this, and in like supporting, bolstering this idea that like, yeah, we all have to work, and our value isn't working. We have to work 40-hour work weeks, and that's what makes you a human. And then you have to really like step outside of it to say like, wait a minute, why is so much human value associated with productivity within this very specific system, right? And if
Yeah.
you're not willing to dismantle that in your own brain, it's way easier to call people malingerers, because you have to like really question where your value comes from and where human value comes from. And most people don't want to do that.
How much of Dave Weagle's opinion about how easy it is to just suck it up and work is based on the fact that he's a relatively comfortable celebrity journalist who's making enough money that he doesn't have to worry, and who is really just chasing down leads on social media to write something to get clicks. So he's not really working that hard based on what we've already been talking about.
Yes.
How does that impact his views on how easy it is for other people to work?
100%. I think this is why so many wealthy people are constantly talking about pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. It's like, what were
People who belong to the leisure class telling us how easy it is for us to work.
Yes, exactly. People who talk about, like, people who unironically talking about like starting their own companies with a ton of capital from their very rich parents. Like,
well, let's to go back to Elon Musk. He used to be infamous for going into the office for like 12, 16 hours and making other people work while he was there. And then he would be lionized as going into the office and working 16-hour days. It's like, what do you think he's doing? Do you think he's doing anything productive, or do you think he's playing video games and on social media while other people work?
Oh my God. I mean, that's the thing. Like, he's not even playing his own Diablo game. So he's certainly not doing his own work in the office.
It's just so hilarious. Yeah, no, it's like.
I know, but again, it's like, I think a lot of people buy into this idea of, and need to buy into this idea of like the hero capitalist, right? Because that's who they aspire to be someday. Because a lot of people, their entire vision for the future and for themselves is wrapped up in this idea of like making a lot of money, you know, in some form of corporation, right?
Well, every time I see a tech magazine with a Tesla reporter, I figure Elon Musk owns this magazine somehow.
Yeah. Totally. Again, from working in PR, I know how much money is actually moving. Is like moving media. There was this one client who they had done like a ton of research. They're like an international company. We were just working with like the US branch of it. But they'd done a ton of research. They really wanted to promote this one particular research finding. They had, I mean, again, it was like 4 years worth of work, and they really they found this connection that they really wanted. They wanted to get it into the media. So they pitched it to the media. I was in charge of doing all the media reporting. So I go through, we have multiple services, and like we'll search for a particular phrase that's used, or for the client name that's used, and then I create the reports. Where was this? What was the ad value, right? There were 150 mentions of this story, and basically each mention was verbatim whatever copy they'd been given by the international branch of this company.
Yeah, well, half of the political reporting that comes out of the legacy media is just repeating the politicians' press releases.
It's stunning, yes, but that's like, it was so, again, it's so wild. And again, we've all kind of seen this before with, of course, I'm going to forget the name of it immediately left my brain. But, you know, when you have like mega corporations who are just, again, to your point, like giving press releases, giving pitches, like you have to say, here's your script. You have to say this. 150 different stations said the exact same 30-second soundbite. Like, this is happening everywhere.
This feeds back into a story nobody talks about anymore, how Sinclair Media bought up a whole bunch of local network affiliates and ended up owning people's local evening news and requiring them all to run the same minute and a half bullshits from that Boris Epstein guy.
Absolutely. That was Sinclair was the one that like left my brain. Yeah. Sinclair Media. I mean, the number of videos that used to be circulating of people who would just compile it. Oh, it's the same script. These are the same words.
Yeah.
They're being shown literally all over the country. And because that's the thing. I don't think most people realize that their local media is not owned locally. It's controlled from a mega corporation.
I used to be able to see how people that I would talk to on my show would end up on the Humanist Report or the Damage Report after talking to me. And then after being on the Humanist Report or the Damage Report, they would end up in mainstream media somewhere. It used to be a progression. I could see how I was helping people break through. I loved it.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I don't see that anymore. It doesn't happen the way it used to. And it's because they're repressing the independent journalists who were doing all this work and magnifying all these bullshit media narratives that you're talking about because they don't have us anymore.
That's exactly it. Yes. Yeah. And it again, it's so pervasive. It's so funny because I was already like pretty mistrustful of everything. But especially now after working in PR, like being able to tell people like I have the inside knowledge of what is happening. I have seen things that I have pitched have made the news, and it's wild to realize like anytime I see a major story now, and like this is probably a PR person who cold emailed a journalist, or in some cases has a relationship with a journalist and calls them and is like, or in some cases, again, like you get an expert on enough shows, they're calling us. Like we had this one, like I said, I loved this client because we were getting calls from literally around the country to talk about this issue. And I was like, yeah, happy to schedule this interview for you. Like
I remember in 2020, a congressional candidate in New York got on the Michael Brooks show because she managed to become a Twitter celebrity. And it was great because she was great. She didn't do very well in the actual voting, but it was great. She was great. Yeah. And if she was able to break through to other things and, get some exposure. She's a comedian and it helped her comedy. So that's good.
Yeah.
And then she was strangled by the changes in independent media the same way as the rest of us were after it just.
Yeah. It's one of those things where
and you can see how a good independent journalist like Benjamin Dixon sells his whole soul out because he was able to get on MSNBC a few times and he desperately wants to somehow get back there again.
Well, this is a lot of like so much of this, like so many people really just want to be on television or really want to be famous. Like they say they want to be a journalist. And this is any profession, by the way. I'm not only singling out journalists.
Oh, I know. But journalism is a great example, though.
Totally. Oh my God, the whole Jake Tapper thing. Like, you better believe I'm going to be researching that as soon as we're done here. Because he's
not the only one, but he's one of the best examples. Wolf Blitzer was literally hired to CNN from a position as the president of media outreach for AIPAC.
God. Yep. It's so funny because I only know the low level, like people, because it really is this revolving door sometimes, from journalism to PR to journalism, because who knows best what a journalist is going to respond to? You're going to get hired by a PR firm, right? And then again, you get connected enough with media. Why wouldn't you just become a journalist, right? So I get it, but oh boy, that people aren't aware of.
And of course, we see it in politics too, when multiple journalists now have gone back and forth between being in journalism and being a press secretary, and then back to journalism.
That's another one. That's another one too. You know, it's so funny. I'm drawing the parallel now because I have friends who are interested in the paranormal. I am too, but I also have friends who are like interested in the UFO space. And the number of people who like are into UFOs and they like used to be working in US intelligence. And it's like, used to? Like I think about that with like press secretaries.
My favorite interesting hobby is the Red String Society.
Oh, I'm not familiar.
The Red String Society is a group of widows and widowers who believe that they are still married to their deceased partners in an active relationship.
Oh God. Oh no.
Now, I do not say this to make fun of it
At all. No.
Because, you know, who knows? I have an open mind about a lot of things. I'm a scientific skeptic in that I won't believe anything until proven. But because I'm a scientific skeptic and not a true skeptic, I enjoy playing around with ideas.
Same. Yes.
But I became aware of this because someone I know, because they were an independent journalist. They were one of the two primary writers when it was good for Snopes.
Oh, yes.
And they went on to become the writers for the much superior trutherfiction.com,
yes.
which was founded by Brooke Binkowski, who is the former editor-in-chief of Snopes.
Yes.
And she basically took the Snopes reporters with her.
Nice.
And so Truth or Fiction was essentially run by all the great people who had made Snopes great in the beginning, and so was much better than Snopes, and then failed because being actually a reliable fact-checking service was bad. Snopes was successful because they got rid of these people who made them great and sold out.
Yes. Yeah. And
trutherfiction.com finally folded after a few years, and I was so sad.
Yeah, of course.
So very serious people believe some interesting things because, again, this is one of the writers who made Snopes great when Snopes was great. And Truth or Fiction talked much more about real news stuff and real political stuff than Snopes did.
Yeah. It's again, like I said, I love a good conspiracy theory. I'm always willing to at least hear something because who knows, right? Like, give me some
hypothesis. That's the big thing, is that it's not conspiracy theory, it's conspiracy hypothesis.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm willing to entertain the hypothesis. Show me the evidence, right?
And if you can prove it, then it's not a theory anymore. Like, the RealPage conspiracy, which is now in court.
I'm not familiar with this.
Oh, so it turns out the reason the rent is so damn high is because the landlords are conspiring. And there was an app helping them conspire better.
Yeah.
Now, I happen to know because I work in an electrical adjacent field, and one of our fields is electrical submetering. I happen to know that RealPage is like one of the go-to technological assists out there for big corporate landlords. It's heavily in use by lots and lots of people.
Oh my God.
I've talked to RealPage tech people in the course of my doing tech support for our products. So they're out there. They're huge. RealPage is huge, and the fact that they're helping landlords collude to fix rents is huge, and it's in federal court right now.
Yeah,
and we'll see what happens with it. But at the same time, while this is in federal court, you have people taken seriously in the media, important people in the Democratic Party saying, what do you mean landlords are conspiring to fix the rent? That's a ridiculous conspiracy theory.
Yeah. Again, I love talking about media literacy, and part of the reason I love talking about PR is because I want to pull back the curtain on all of this stuff.
Yes.
Because I don't think that people realize how much, again, on the one hand, there are a bunch of journalists who mean well, but they are struggling to survive, and they're just trying to churn out stuff, right? That's why they post these queries looking for experts. They literally do not have the time to find an expert on their own, right? But on the other hand, you have other media outlets that are like really just suppression, right? Because God forbid people realize like, oh, the landlords are fixing rents. What else is going on? What else, right? Because you start deconstructing some of these things and the rest of it starts to crumble.
And nobody's picked up, even though it's been in all over all sorts of media for years now. I have not seen MSNBC break the RealPage scandal. I have not seen CNN or Fox News break the RealPage scandal.
Yes. Yes.
People still don't know that it exists because, you know, their mainstream media hasn't broken the scandal.
And there's so much of this where if people don't hear it on the news, then it's not real to them, or it's just an internet conspiracy, right? Like the RealPage, like I didn't realize it had gone to federal court, but I've only seen that on Twitter, right? Like
Yeah.
the mention of that on Twitter. Again, I don't like. This is another thing in like the COVID cautious space where people get really mad because they feel like people are intentionally like memory holding a bunch of information, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for the mainstream media, and this is when I talk to people who are not online or like older relatives, they only know what they have heard on the news
Yeah.
and like the radio and television. And as far as they know, if you're vaccinated, you're safe. And if you or COVID is just a cold now.
Yeah.
That's all they've heard. Like, and so
But you know, the COVID is just a cold wasn't something that started in mainstream media. The COVID is just a cold was something that was being pushed by all these people in independent media who are being paid lots of money by tech billionaires.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
Brett fucking Weinstein. So for those who don't know who he is, Brett Weinstein was a professor at a local school here just across the border in Washington called Evergreen College. Mm-hmm. He was fired because he had an absolutely horrible racist meltdown in response to a just mild sort of ceremonial protest where all the black students didn't go to class for a day.
Yeah.
And he had a racist meltdown about it and lost his job. As he should have, for having a racist meltdown about his students posing a rather mild protest, when we all know that as long as you can pass the test and are doing the assignments, it's not like 100% rigorous attendance is exactly required in college.
Right.
So this is somebody having a grade school level flip out about black students who's supposed to be teaching college students.
Mm-hmm.
So first we're infantilizing young adults, and second we're dehumanizing the infantilized people because they're children.
Yes.
And is just ridiculous. But he has a brother who works in a very important position for, and this name keeps coming up, Peter Thiel.
Yep.
And his brother is actually the guy who popularized the term internet dark web before Barry Weiss picked it up.
Interesting.
And of course, Brett Weinstein is one of these internet dark web people who talks about how liberal and leftist he is, but who is really pushing all of these right-wing, eugenics-based, it's all in our DNA bullshit.
Yeah.
He's one of several people who became a much bigger celebrity than he should have because of ridiculous COVID denialism. And Matt Taibbi went out of his way to platform him and put him out there so people knew who he was and what he was doing. And then Jimmy Dore started saying COVID is just a cold, the vaccine is worse.
Yep. Yeah.
And Jimmy Dore somehow became influential on how mainstream media talked about COVID.
I feel like if I went back in time and tried to talk to a journalist like 30 years ago, what the landscape would look like in terms of disseminating information, they would think I was crazy, right? Because how do you explain any of this to people who are not online, to people who don't see these things happening?
Yeah, yeah. We
How
talked to one of these old-time newspaper editors who said stuff like, oh yes, Finley Dunn, who said, the job of a newspaper is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable.
Mhm.
And it's like you talk to somebody like that now and say, hey, look at what the media looks like today.
Yeah.
And then look at the expression on their face.
I mean, it's a horror for me, and I'm, like, in it. I see it, but it's just, like, this is the thing that's just become this is how news moves now. And, like, again, to your point, this idea of, like, the vaccine is more dangerous than the infection, like, that is very quickly becoming a mainstream position.
RFK Jr. has been mainstream for a long time, since COVID started, and was influencing people who influenced us even before COVID, even when he was marginalized himself.
Yes.
Even though RFK Jr. was himself marginalized, serious liberal opinion influencers like Arianna Huffington and Bill Maher were RFK Jr. disciples, and people didn't really understand that about them.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I think this is a broader conversation, but, like, people's idea of politics are so narrow, and really this, like, red team, blue team kind of
Yes.
sensibility. But it's all, again, under, like, consumer capital, right? There's no, like, really questioning or talking about alternatives to any of that. So that whole, like, my team, someone else's team. And so, like, they don't really understand. It's just kind of like two flavors of the same. It's the same team, right? Like, that just kind of maybe
To reference the 80s again, it's a big club and you ain't in it.
That's correct. Well, correct. Again, like, one of my favorite little meme quotes is, like, the only class with class consciousness is the rich, right? Like, they all fall in line, they all protect each other, and they're also all kind of above consequences, right? Because RFK Jr. can talk about how raw milk is great for you. They're not drinking raw milk, right? Like, they don't have a chance.
Well, I believe RFK Jr. is really drinking raw milk.
I mean, he probably is. But here's another thing too, that, like, this idea of, like, again, is he drinking from the farm that has caused, like, more listeria outbreaks in the past 15
Well, see, and that's the whole thing, is he might be drinking raw milk from a really ethical producer who keeps everything super refrigerated all the time and is super conscious about safety and puts all the right labeling on the package so everybody who handles it knows it's raw milk.
Yep.
Or it might be the farm that doesn't give a shit and has been giving thousands of people listeria every year.
Yes.
And that's the problem, is that he wants everybody to be able to drink raw milk, but he also wants the FDA to go away, even though supposedly Big Pharma is the problem. How can you be against Big Pharma and the FDA? That's the part I don't understand.
Right. Well, it's fascinating because it's this manipulation, because it's any idea, like, any elite is corrupt, right? Except, but we're the
he's Bobby Kennedy's grandson. He's Bobby Kennedy's son. He's a fucking elite himself. He's a Kennedy. Trump is the heir to a real estate company that was so famous that Marvel Comics writers made his father a villain in the 70s. There is an issue of the Avengers in, like, 1969, written by a man named Roy Thomas, where a real estate and construction thug named Cornelius Van Lunt, who's based on Fred Trump and looks like a slightly fatter, slightly balder Fred Trump, forces the Avengers to work for him, demolishing properties. Later on, he would found a crime cartel called Zodiac, where everybody was named after their Zodiac sign and wore these impressive costumes. Oh my God. And this is because, and Fred Trump was famous for his horoscope shit. So they were literally making fun of Fred Trump in Marvel Comics. He was such a local New York celebrity.
Yeah.
Well, when some of these people complaining about elites complain about Matt Taibbi is another great example. Matt Taibbi's father, Nick, became Mike Taibbi. He became a big star reporting on Afghanistan and became an NBC anchor.
Yeah. And again, this is what's fascinating to me about this like manipulation, right?
One of the biggest sort of alt-left news outlets on Twitter, the Gray Zone, is run by Max Blumenthal, who is the son of Bill Clinton's Sidney Blumenthal. When he rages against elites, he is the son of one of Bill Clinton's DNC guys.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not saying that some of these people haven't done good work too, but all of these people focus on elites instead of capitalism, despite being elites themselves.
Yes. Yes.
And end up peddling a lot of reactionary shit. Let's not forget how much Gray Zone and anti-trans shit, how much anti-vax and anti-trans shit the Gray Zone people have pushed.
Yes. Well, and to that point, this idea of if it's elites, right, it's our team, their team, as opposed to the entire system and structure that is facilitating oppression and destruction. Like, don't look at the man behind the curtain, right?
That was like Tucker Carlson talking about elites, and he's the heir to the Swanson chicken fortune.
Right.
Here's a scary fact for you. The current mayor of San Francisco, Daniel Lurie, and a congressman in New York City who was a big MSNBC celebrity, Dan Goldman, are related. Do you know how I know they're related? They're both big heirs to Levi Strauss money.
Yeah.
So 2 heirs to the Levi Strauss fortune are mayor of San Francisco and congressman from New York.
God.
Whereas an heir to the Ballpark Frank fortune is a congressman from Michigan. She also used to work for she's a senator now, and she used to work for the CIA.
Oh.
You know who I mean.
Yeah.
Her family founded the company that became famous for selling Ballpark Franks.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Delise.
Again, it's like this manufacturing of the illusion of choice and the illusion of, like, multiple interests, and at the top it's one interest, and it's about sustaining their power.
I mean, the two most quote unquote progressive periods in American history were the Civil War and Reconstruction. And during the Civil War and Reconstruction, it is important to understand that even though they did not completely embrace class struggle in the way they should have, the Republican Party of the Civil War era were quasi-Marxists, some of whom were actually pen pals with Karl Marx. Abraham Lincoln exchanged a few letters with Karl Marx.
Wow. Yeah.
It's just funny.
Yeah.
And you look at the way that Abraham Lincoln or Charles Sumner wrote about the relationship between labor and capital, and it's like, this is Marxism.
Yeah.
They were specifically supporting capital because they believed that was what was necessary to reach the level of development where they would be able to do the next Marxist step.
Yeah.
And that sort of went off the rails in the end, but they did a lot of good at the time.
Yeah.
Thaddeus Stevens, who was named as one of the villains of Reconstruction in so many books, was this Christian anarchist from Pennsylvania who on his deathbed was crying about the fact that his life was a failure because the state had failed to pass an initiative he wrote that would have given Black Pennsylvanians the vote. And so he's crying about this while he's dying, saying his life was a failure. Imagine what he would think of Republicans today.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I think a lot of people don't realize, I talked about this, like with Tocqueville, the idea of like choices being limited, but like really how many, like how boring things are now. Like people are like, it's just kind of like you're in this one particular way of thinking or in another, and that's it. And you think you're free because you can choose between one or two, but like, yeah, to your point, like You could be like a Christian
There was a
anarchist.
lot of team politics. There was a lot of team politics involved in those days too. One of Lincoln's close advisors was this big capitalist who was affiliated with the Republicans because he wanted to make money off the Civil War.
Yeah,
He ended up shipping his first Secretary of War off to Russia as an ambassador because he was signing so many corrupt contracts he couldn't be trusted as Secretary of War.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So there were bad people in the Republican Party then too. It wasn't all wonderful, but I mean, some of these people who, abolished slavery and prevented the reactionary secession of a slave-based nation just south of where we live now, weren't actually bad people. They really did believe in this good shit.
Yeah.
And really were personally broken by the way they were unable to make the country better in the way that they had tried.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the real tragedies, is that we have all this lost cause bullshit about the people who fought to defend slavery, and we villainized the Thaddeus Stevens and Charles Sumners who actually tried to save the soul of America, so to speak.
And this too, I feel like, again, talking about like these tech billionaires who have no respect for human life or human existence, even. And I feel like we've lost this idea of maybe not necessarily progress, but like you said, like saving the soul of America, like saving something, right? Like people don't even believe in kind of anything anymore. It's just this weird kind of fatalism about everything.
A fatalism / nihilism / as long as I'm okay, it's okay.
That like I got to get mine. I don't care about anybody else, as opposed to like a sense.
And you can see how the media has been training us to be this way over the years. If you just read the right stuff, you can see how newspaper columns went from uplifting advice columns with good intentions like your Dear Abbeys and your Ann Landers to these nihilistic, vaguely liberal or vaguely right-wing humor columns that didn't really mean anything.
It's all that. I mean, I even think about like the rise of reality television and how that was kind of this like this shift, because again, when I was talking earlier about like a lot of journalists, a lot of people, they just want to be famous. They don't want to be good at anything. They don't want to be known for anything aside from like being famous, right? And so this shift in like the idea that like, oh, you can just be on television and then you somehow become famous because of that, and that is an end in and of itself. Just this like incredibly vapid goals, pursuits.
Once you become famous, you can parlay fame into money and have a good life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
And ultimately, the only real goal is to have a good life.
Right. And not caring about at whose expense, right? Because again, it's always at somebody else's expense if you
because celebrities are ultimately supported by the public.
Right. Yeah. Right. Like that you just like, if you can cultivate a parasocial relationship with enough people, and you can turn that. Again, you can parlay that into like a career, or you can become an influencer, but you need to.
Hey, I mean, I'm trying to sell journalism on the internet.
Yeah.
I'm trying to accomplish something. I want to tell people about stuff that's really going on, and have conversations about culture and politics and society and media that help people organize with each other against the world we live in better.
Yeah.
And to understand why we need to. But at the same time, I'm also trying to become famous on the internet so that people will consume that product and pay me for it. So there's a sort of self-doubt in the best of us, and the worst people don't have that self-doubt.
Exactly. Yeah, they're not thinking about this. Again, it's a parasite logic, right? Like, what can I extract out of people in order to get what I want, and no consideration for who you're extracting from. Or
the best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity.
There you go. Exactly. Yes.
And does that not perfectly describe our Democrat and Republican parties? We have Democrats who believe in nothing and are just not the Republicans. And then we have the most evil people in the world saying, hey, we're the most evil people in the world. Vote for us so that we hurt the people you don't like.
The fact that that is a winning political strategy, we will hurt. Well, first of all, it's more like we will hurt everyone, but we'll hurt you less. We'll hurt the people you hate more, right? Because
originally the promise was very specific, and you still see people communicate this on Twitter, even though Trump doesn't communicate it the same way anymore. But originally the promise was very specific. We will hurt all these people and your life will be better because of it.
Yes, exactly. That was the initial promise, but now it's morphed into people.
There's going to be some pain for everyone, but it's going to get so much better down the road.
It's going to get better for us, and it's going to stay bad for these people we don't like. That logic, it boggles my mind. And that, and again, that it is a winning political strategy for a lot of people who, again, have abandoned their own humanity. Like, as much as I want to criticize politicians, like, a lot of people have abandoned their own humanity too, and are just like, okay,
if you can't beat them, join them has become like the mantra of American politics.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, that's the left, I mean, liberals, just like, okay, well, we'll throw trans people under the bus to try to get a little bit of this right wing,
in 1968, 1968, a man named Thomas Eagleton ran for Senate in North Dakota with the specific intention of throwing black people under the bus. He was later in 1972, a man from Delaware named Joe Biden ran for Senate again with the specific intention of throwing black people under the bus.
Yeah.
In 1978, a man named Paul Tsongas ran against Edward Brooke, the most liberal senator in the Senate and a Republican, in order to throw black people under the bus. and was helped by a criminal investigation into Republican Senator Edward Brooke's divorce carried out by a Middlesex County DA named John Kerry, who would later succeed Paul Tsongas as senator from Massachusetts.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Now, there are real reasons to respect John Kerry for his anti-Vietnam advocacy in the 1970s.
Yeah.
But once he became famous, he sold out.
Yeah.
And it wasn't hard for him because he came from a family that was part of the ruling class already.
Yeah, of course. Of course. And again, the ruling class is interested in maintaining their power, whatever means necessary. It's kind of like, you can have your little dalliance in progressive politics.
We remember 1972 for George McGovern losing. Yeah. But in 1972, the Democrats took Congress on a huge scale by running all of these ex-Republican bank presidents as anti-Vietnam War candidates.
Oh my God.
Literally, there was a guy in California who took over what had been one of the most liberal districts in California by putting up a sign, "Stop the War," on his bank.
People just care about
and all these people, all these rich white Democrats then proceeded in the 70s to sell out black people, throw them under the bus to make suburban white voters and white middle class professionals more comfortable with the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And the results of that were Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton.
Right.
The Democratic Party became so similar to the Republican Party that no less than Orville Faubus, the man who stood out in front of Little Rock High School to fight against integration, said, "I'm sorry, we can't trust these Democrats anymore. We got to nominate Jesse Jackson." Orval Faubus, the segregationist governor of Arkansas, became a born-again super liberal who supported Jesse Jackson in 84, 88. But we have never been given his media redemption arc, and we don't have a movie about him. We have a movie about George Wallace, whose redemption arc comes from supporting Jimmy fucking Carter, who really wasn't that much different than George Wallace.
Right.
But why don't we have the Orval Faubus redemption movie about him supporting Jesse Jackson and talking about how ultimately poor white people will only benefit if poor black people's lives are better?
Yes. Right. Well, again, God forbid anybody is in alignment with, isn't like working with somebody who is, again, the interest of the rich, right? Like all of us should be aspiring to be up here as opposed to helping everybody else on the ground and targeting that rage upwards. Like that, again, that's like to talk about media manipulation or like manufacturing consent, right? Like who gets redeemed, who is the hero?
When Clinton won the nomination for the governor of Arkansas the first time, his opponent in the primary was Orval Faubus. And he championed himself as running against the old ways while Orval Faubus was trying to run a left-wing campaign. So you have Bill Clinton talking about segregation and the horrible history that Orval Faubus is related to, while Orval Faubus is trying to run against Bill Clinton from the left.
Oh my God.
And then, of course, you look at what Bill Clinton actually did as governor of Arkansas when he finally was elected.
Right.
And you think about that. He stood up and said the guy running against him from the left was a horrible racist and proceeded to be a horrible racist as governor.
Right.
Which brings us to 2016 and Bill Clinton saying, well, how will breaking up the big banks end racism?
Mm-hmm.
And Bernie Sanders not having the basic immediate agility to be able to say, who does the redlining, Hillary?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yes. Again,
and I always was disappointed in Bernie for not being able to say, well, who did the redlining?
Right. Like,
who discriminates against black people when it comes time to give them loans, Hillary?
Right. And again, decades of evidence that we have for all of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, people talk about conspiracy theories. Let's talk about an actual conspiracy that has been happening for decades.
The purchase of the Democratic Party by Wall Street.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. It's, and again, that there's no, it's just so fascinating to me that like the theoretical landscape, right? Like I One-Dimensional Man by Herbert Marcuse, I cite that a lot, but that like flattening of the theoretical landscape, that people really can't imagine alternatives outside what they've been presented at all. Like this idea, and again, like people just aspire to be rich as opposed to dismantling Wall Street or talk, like the stock market is a ridiculous thing that we've all decided.
Well, John Steinbeck's possibly apocryphal socialism is never taken on in America because every American thinks he's a temporarily inconvenienced millionaire.
Yes. A lot of people's politics. Well, and especially because if you are linking, the accumulation of capital with morality, which a lot of people do, right? Even before this.
Calvinism.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And so this idea that, like, again,
what are Baptists again? These evangelical, born again Baptists who believe everyone has a predestined future. Oh yeah, Calvinists.
It's kind of wild how so much of it goes back to that. Yes. But again,
Calvinists are also where the Protestant work ethic comes from. Who benefits from the Protestant work ethic?
Right. Right. Again, it's a surprise that this has, again, is mainstream. Even if you don't identify as Christian, like you are raised to believe these certain
things. But this is why you see the once so-called new atheist Richard Dawkins say that while he does not believe in God, he is culturally Christian.
Right. Yeah.
And now I want to think about how you can define a so-called new atheist as culturally Christian for a moment, and what that means in a PR sense.
Oh, God.
When the atheist says he's a culturally Christian, he's not reaching out to other atheists.
Right. Well, oh boy. So yeah, exactly. Well, this is another interesting thing because again, this is like what we've been talking about for the past couple hours, where people are trying to align themselves with like a ruling class, right? Or like a dominant paradigm without actually,
Yes,
it's like the illusion of being different, right? But within a bounded range
yes.
you don't have to be afraid of, right? I'm an atheist, but I'm not coming for you. I'm not trying to dismantle this, right? I'm culturally Christian. Like,
The so-called, what's the word I'm looking for now? The so-called contrarians, whose contrarian views always seem to ultimately reinforce status quo facts.
it's wild how that happens, right? It seems to happen all the time. Yeah. I'm such an
It's
original.
like how I hate to be a contrarian, but I don't think the police are actually enemies of the working class. Well, that's not actually contrarian. That's mainstream, sir.
Yes, yes, exactly. Right. But again, it's couched in this idea of like, again, like I'm the rebel and the actual rebel, right? Like
I'm rebel. I'm so rebellious. I'm rebelling against the rebels and trying to explain to them why they should be less rebellious.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And in a lot of people's minds, like that tracks to them,
The
right?
counter-revolutionary is the true
That's true.
rebel of American society.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, isn't it weird that all of the people who manage to get any kind of press or attention, like you said, are all reinforcing the dominant order ultimately, but couching it as this like intellectual rebellion and this like, being a true free spirit. Like, all right,
I
all
mean,
right.
you can see the development. I'm going to call out names again because Matt Taibbi was one of these guys, and here's another. You can see the development of Glenn Greenwald's career becoming more liberal when MSNBC wants to talk to him and becoming more reactionary when MSNBC doesn't want to talk to him, but Fox News does.
Yes. Again, it's again, we were talking about this earlier. Like, I do understand when people are kind of playing this game, right? I
Yeah.
do, because we live in a capitalist hellscape. You have to pay your bills somehow. Like, I absolutely get it. And like social cachet, it can be just as valuable as money, right? And it can lead you to opportunity. Totally understand. But the problem is that most people aren't media savvy enough or media literate enough to see what's going on and point out what's actually going on and fall for it. Like, no matter what, oh, well, he's saying what I agree with. Oh, well, he just said that on Fox News because he was on Fox News, or vice versa, right? Like, you decide, much like with this like team politics, you decide a person, these individuals are on your team, they're one of your guys, and you kind of excuse anything that's outside of what you need to believe they believe or need to believe that they think. And so then people are able to be just kind of like slimy and work their way through and work different angles and get their money that way. Again, I get it. I think it's gross, but I get it.
And I mean, we live in a world where, and I think it's funny. Somebody brought up, somebody started trashing Winnie Mandela on Twitter just a few days ago, and that makes me wonder a little, because one of the things that I've been saying lately is somebody needs to make a meme with Winnie Mandela's face. Ask this woman what she did while her husband was in prison.
Yep.
And so it's like, is somebody already trying to sort of trash Winnie Mandela because people are going to start to turn away from Nelson Mandela and start talking about Winnie Mandela in the near future?
It's, again, I think you can kind of see some rumblings happen. And it's like, again, I think a lot of this stuff too becomes this like scattershot. Like to me, social media, again, from a sociological background, like if you want information on groupthink, group politics, like how ideas get formed, how memes get how information gets transmitted, like kind of mimetic culture, like you just watch on social media. So you could try a bunch of things and
Well,
see what hits.
from a sociological background, I'm going to occupy the somewhat extreme position held by Karl Popper and say, maybe certain kinds of people shouldn't feel safe in a civilized society.
Yes. Again, we talk a lot about this too with like in the paranormal space that I used to hang out with.
Yes.
Like so many of these people hold really racist, really sexist, really gross, like transphobic views.
So one of the important phenomena of American culture, important phenomena of American culture is that Nazis infiltrate every subculture, from comic books to the occult to video games, everything.
Yeah. Anime, it's everywhere. Yes.
Yes. The paranormal is a big part of it, particularly because groups like the Theosophists were proto-Nazi in the first place back in the day.
100%. And people don't know their history there. Yes. So specifically in the paranormal and also in the UFO space, ton of really racist, but like either not quasi-Nazis or Nazis in these spaces. But people I should say a lot of white people excuse this because they're like, well,
Yes.
they're going to get us closer to disclosure, or they have access to some other kind of whatever religious or spiritual belief. So they're willing to excuse reprehensible beliefs in order to have access to what they think is higher information. But that is a signal to anyone marginalized that this is now a Nazi space and you're not safe there. So so for me, it was like a constant conversation of like, what are the spaces that we can create to make it very clear we don't tolerate this. I don't care if you know a senator who has a friend who saw an alien in some base somewhere. I don't care. If you hold really horrible beliefs, you are not welcome here. And we're gonna.
I know that all these people who resist anti-fascism and try to paint anti-fascism as somehow as bad as fascism. All these people, you have never had some weird esoteric hobby that's been taken over by Nazis, have you?
Totally. Like how can somebody telegraph that they're a normie? Like really quick? Because it's everywhere. There was this was several years ago at this point, but there was this huge blow up in like the esoteric community because there was this Thelemite influencer, and she got outed as like being friends with multiple neo-Nazis, like multiple. And so then that kind of recontextualized some of her trad wife adjacent and very binary shit. And there were a ton of people who were just excusing it because they wanted because she had created this like persona and they wanted access to her and they didn't want to act like she was bad. And it's like, this is bad. Like, this is bad. And this is under the radar. And again, like people are groomed online to not talk about their worst beliefs.
And the fact that there are all these trad wife influencers in the first place is a reflection of Nazi influence.
Also that, yes. Exactly. People just think this trend just came out of nowhere. Like, are you not paying attention to the overculture like at all? Like, it's just it's so stunning. But yeah,
and of course it's the party of family values that pushes trad wife shit. So it's the party of family values that is basically telling on themselves, family values means Nazism. The problem is then the Democrats try to embrace family values on the basis that the Republicans are embracing family values in good faith. And then all of a sudden we have to take these ridiculous bigoted Christian Nazis seriously.
Right. We have to listen to them. We can't be intolerant.
Whatever. They're reflecting important fears in our society.
Oh my. I get so mad because so many people are just very clearly being played and are buying.
But then you can see it, because once people start talking about cops and how, we can't really say bad things about cops because people like cops.
Right.
But then, that's just the Nazi argument.
It always boils down to this, where people are afraid of alienating a certain group. And
Yes.
I'm always like, I don't care if I alienate people that I think are reprehensible, who behave horribly, who have horrible beliefs. I don't care if I alienate those people. I'm very comfortable with that. And I don't understand people who are uncomfortable, like, oh, we can't upset anybody. We can't upset anybody. And it's like, you not upsetting Nazis mean that like marginalized people are deeply upset. And they have to
And on that subject, we come to a man with an obviously Jewish name praising Charlie Kirk for doing an obvious anti-Semite for doing politics the right way.
I don't like everybody I it's incoherent. That's like I'm incoherent at this point trying to articulate like I don't understand people's politics anymore and how they're able to say what they are because it's so incongruous, so many of these different things, and they manage to just like squish it all together and like and in their head, I think they believe what they're saying. I think a lot of people aren't, but it's just like how are you making this leap? How are you making this connection?
I'll give you the best example because this will really explain it, and you can decide for yourself what's conscious and what's unconscious. I tend to lean towards a lot of stuff being more unconscious and social than conscious and deliberate, but who knows? Different people, different motivations. But I listened to a podcast where Ezra Klein talked to David French.
Okay.
And he was talking to David French about racism. And supposedly it was supposed to be a debate about the liberal view of systemic racism versus the conservative and individualist view of racism as some personal moral flaw.
Yeah.
But instead, it was just this sort of friendly conversation between two people who allegedly disagreed, where all that Ezra Klein was really doing was just sort of reinforcing David French's right to disagree with him and not actually trying to debate him.
Oh my God.
And so all you're doing is normalizing a horrible Christian nationalist like David French.
Yeah.
And letting him say he doesn't think he's racist. And then sort of agreeing with him that he's not racist.
Yeah.
This is Ezra Klein, the liberal. Even before abundance and blatantly pandering to Trumpers. This was when he was allegedly pandering to liberals. So what white liberals apparently wanted to see from him, or he thought what white liberals wanted to see from him, was him reinforcing a Nazi's right to be a Nazi in liberal society.
And the number of liberals who really care more about this like politeness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like again, we have an open dialogue. There's no open dialogue with Nazis. There just isn't. You shouldn't. Like, well, why are you entertaining that? But this idea of like taking the high ground and again being polite and like
this guy is an existential threat to our democracy who must be defeated during the election, and then after the election we want to be bipartisan and work with the majority.
Right. It is nonsensical. It's nonsensical.
How do they expect people to believe them when they say this man is an existential threat to our democracy during the election, when their first words after the election are, well, we want to be bipartisan with the existential threat to our democracy because they won the election?
That it's again, do you have, again, if somebody is diagnosed with cancer, you don't talk to the cancer. You cut it out. You beam it, radiation at it, chemotherapy. If you think that there is an existential threat to democracy and suddenly you want to have a conversation with it, how does that work? Right? But again, I think a lot of politicians are stuck in this idea of we have to maintain the illusion of a certain social order. And so we can't then suddenly like, oh, if an illegitimate person has office, does that throws the legitimacy of the whole system into question?
Their position and wealth and power all comes from things as they are. Yes. They're the ones who have something to lose if we overthrow the system.
That's exactly it. Yes. Yes.
Nancy Pelosi was significantly wealthy in her own right before she got married, because her family was a political family in one of the most corrupt cities in the country. But after she left her family to move out to San Francisco, she then married an even wealthier investment banker.
Right. Right. Right.
And her whole rise to power in the Democratic establishment was originally as a donor.
Again, I just want people to like take a step back and really think about like, is somebody from this background going to do anything ultimately to improve your material conditions? Or is it all just going to be surface to like make you compliant? That
Nancy Pelosi was aggressively for Medicare for all when when it had no chance of ever being popular in the Democratic Party.
Yep.
And has been aggressively against Medicare for all ever since it became the majority position in the Democratic Party.
I know, isn't it weird how that keeps happening? How like that keeps happening. Yes.
It does.
Yeah.
Biden was for a public option during the election.
I remember that. Yes. Yes.
There was supposed to be a public option in Obamacare in the first place.
I remember that too. Yes.
And what's more is that there was a Medicare for All caucus that very aggressively opposed Obamacare going to the Senate Finance Committee in the first place, who were all ultimately convinced to vote for Obamacare anyway.
Yes. It's again amazing how they all fall in line, right? Like ultimately, like again, you're talking about like Glenn Greenwald, like shifting depending on where he goes.
But
like,
I want to notice that there was specifically a Medicare for All caucus that called itself that in 2017. In 2009, right after Obama took office.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, all those people ended up voting for Obamacare with maybe one or two exceptions. But it included the most progressive people in the Democratic Party at the time.
Yeah.
It's just very, very interesting how much changes when Democrats actually have power. All the way back in 1978, what was then called the Democratic Socialist Organizing Committee, they go by DSA now, but they were DSOC then. What was then called the Democratic Socialist Organizing Committee achieved what was possibly the biggest electoral success of socialists in America ever, when in 1978, all of the Democrats who won their elections had been vocal proponents of what was called the Democratic Agenda, which was a DSOC written set of policy positions far to the left of Bernie Sanders' 2016 or 2020 platform.
Yeah.
And this was the mainstream position of the Democratic Party, everything from universal health care to expansion and increased funding of Social Security.
Yeah.
Giving Medicare to more people over a 4-year period, not a 10-year period or a 6-year period, but a 4-year period, the course of one presidential term.
Right.
Not something that's going to take effect when your opponents can take credit for it.
Right. Yes. It's again, so my grandparents, they grew up in Poland and were in Poland during World War II, right? Immigrants here. And even they were so supportive. They were like, I don't understand why we don't just pay for people's medical bills, right?
Well, let's remember that in Cold War Poland, at the time, the most active opposition to the communist Polish government was still a putatively communist organization called Solidarity, made up of labor unions who were attacking the government from the left on the position that it wasn't communist enough, and who became right-wing after they took power with the help of CIA money. I'm sorry, not even so much CIA money, sadly, as Heritage Foundation money, because Heritage Foundation is who the CIA laundered all this anti-Cold War spending through.
Got it.
One of the fun ironies of our life is that a Ukrainian Nazi movement built up by Heritage Foundation money is now opposed by the Heritage Foundation.
Oh my God.
Not because they're any less Nazi, but just because they like Russia better than Ukraine.
Right. Again, I think people don't understand like how much money, how much these like organizations who at least used to hang out in the background, now they've made more of a name for themselves. That's what's actually running.
Well, so when Rush Limbaugh died, nobody you did not see him eulogized on the left as a great man, with the way we're seeing people talk about the wonderful things Charlie Kirk accomplished for his side, being said by people who are allegedly liberals and who should hate everything Charlie Kirk stands for.
You would think. It's been really eye-opening. A lot of the friends, the social media like acquaintances that I have, it's just like, oh, this is who you actually are.
And Karl Popper wasn't even a communist. Karl Popper was just a liberal. And even Karl Popper could say, Nazis shouldn't feel safe in a civilized society.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yes. I don't know why this is a controversial opinion now.
Well, you're seeing this violence is always bad, this flattening of everything. Now, I come from a peace church. And coming from a peace church, I grew up with around people saying violence is always bad.
Yes.
And so I understand the appeal of violence is always bad. That's my background.
Sure.
But it's not just enough to say violence is always bad. It's also very important to talk about how bad things cause violence.
Yes. Right. Right. Again, that like this liberal politeness, right? This appeal to politeness.
And it's worth noted that my peace church became a peace church because of they didn't want to be associated with their failed uprising anymore.
Oh.
So the history of Anabaptism, I'm a Mennonite, or was, and depends on the mood you catch me in. The history of Anabaptism is that a bunch of violent social revolutionaries seized control of the city of Munster, tried to level the economic situation of the people who lived in the city, and went around to all the families and asked the women and children, are you living where you want to live? And if they said yes, they went on to the next family. And if they said no, they said, where do you want to live instead? And then they took them there, which made them all sorts of enemies.
Of course, yes.
But that was literally one of the first things they did. Was they set up a government organization which would go around and ask all the women and children if they felt safe where they were living, because that's what it was really about when they said, do you want to live where you're living?
Yeah.
Is this where you want to live? They're asking them, do you feel safe? Do you feel loved? Do you feel protected?
Yes.
And if they say no and they want to live somewhere else,
they're
saying they're not loved and protected. They don't feel safe. They want to go someplace they'll feel safer. And then the government made it its business to take them where they felt safer.
Yeah.
And they were accused of supporting polygamy and opposing marriage and being sinful, and were attacked by the status quo religious authorities and the government, and evicted from power.
Right.
And then after this rebellion failed, a group that called themselves the Mennonites said, well, we're not like them. We believe peace and pacifism, and all violence is bad.
Yeah.
When initially they were formed to fight against state violence.
It's and again, this idea, like, violence is bad, but what are you identifying as violent, right? Like, if you understand the state apparatus as violent, resistance to that is a lot different.
The original Munster Anabaptist said men beating their wife and children or raping their wife and children is violent.
Right.
But the social status of the time said, no, men own their wives and children. Taking wives and children away from their men is sinful.
Right, right.
And it's just interesting how that one thing completely upended how their whole revolution was seen. And that one thing was the most beneficial part of the whole revolution.
Yeah. That's fascinating.
But I've always thought that was so important that they actually formed a government commission asking women and children if they felt safe at home.
That's incredible. Yeah.
And that was their downfall, because that was what made society hate them.
Yeah, of course. Well, right. Because if you push back too much, too hard, too much, like, people don't know how to handle it. Like, even though people are abused by this current order, they are familiar with this current order, right? And again,
and it's the people standing up for the people abused by the current order who are most hated.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Look at how liberals still talk about Bernie Sanders even as he licks their boots.
Yeah, he's a much different man now, but
they haven't noticed.
I know.
And it's just
yeah.
And the media seems to have back now to Bernie is a real Democrat like everyone else. In the attempt to make everyone believe that the other Democrats are somehow more like Bernie Sanders than they used to be. When if that's true, it's only because Bernie's moved closer to them.
Totally. Yes. But again, it's interesting to watch how these narratives shift depending on their utility, right?
Bernie Sanders, COVID, whether or not it's bad for police to kill Black people.
Yeah.
All of this.
Yeah.
We're now, defund the police was the worst mistake Democrats ever. No, defund the police got Joe Biden elected, and then he specifically backed away from it. It's kind of hilarious that Joe Biden was telling the leaders of the NAACP, defund the police kicked our butts in the election when he won.
Right.
How did your butt get kicked? You won. What does this person think of as getting his butt kicked?
Yeah. But again, I think Democrats...
You were criticized. People said defund the police was bad and you won anyway. And now you're siding with your critics.
Right. Right. But again, it's like Democrats need to pay this, like, or play this game where they're constantly the victims and they're constantly powerless, even if they win. Because once they win, people expect them to enact the policies they elected them for, and they have to come up with reasons why not and why they have to maintain the status quo.
And yet Republicans manage to be ridiculously powerful, even in the minority, so much that they can completely halt anything from happening that doesn't conform to their agenda somehow.
Yes, right, exactly. Yeah.
Why can't Democrats ever prevent Republicans from passing bad bills the way Republicans and Democrats prevent Democrats from passing good bills?
Right.
Why are there never as many Republicans who oppose bad bills as there are Democrats who oppose good bills?
Exactly. Yeah. 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 Again, weird how that always works out. It's been the same way for decades. Isn't that weird? Yeah.
I think I want to ask you at this point, because we've hit the 2-hour mark. Do you have any final thoughts? Do you have anything you want to promote?
Not really promote, no.
That's fair.
Just media literacy in general. Like, again,
Yes.
my advice to everyone is, if you see something, don't assume it's true. Look for the story behind the story, right? If you suddenly see a certain narrative everywhere, think like, hey, is this a coordinated PR campaign, or is something else going on, right? Because sometimes the news is just the news, but sometimes the news is actually just money behind it. So
Are there tech journalists critical of tech billionaires? That's like the best question I can ask to find out if that's an outlet worth reading at least some of the time or not. Are there tech journalists critical of tech billionaires?
That's a really good one. Yes. Yeah. If you have anybody who's kind of critical of capital in general, but also specifically tech billionaires, like, then because again, so much media is really just like I said, reinforcing the dominant order.
And what do they criticize tech billionaires for? Because if they're criticizing tech billionaires for being too liberal, then they're out of touch with the way tech billionaires are influencing our politics right now. Lee Fang of all people, who should know better, tried to cast Reid Hoffman as some sort of pro-leftist billionaire giving money to progressive causes.
God. Again, also look at, like, how are certain horrible people's reputations being laundered in the media by journalists who are all too eager to do it for, money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. Well, I mean, it's like anybody who says anything, the easiest thing to do. Now, obviously, I said some critical things. I think people should say critical things. But the easiest thing to do if you don't want to be seen as to criticizing the dead is just shut up and not say anything.
Yeah.
The easiest thing to do is not make any statement at all about the fact that Charlie Kirk was shot.
Right.
And we're a lazy society. This shouldn't be a problem. And yet.
So many people
took the effort to suck up because they know that Barry Weiss is going to be editor-in-chief of CBS News.
Right.
Since we've been talking about all this.
Yeah. It's, again,
maybe that should have been the lead of the story, but
yeah.
Maybe that should have been the lead. Barry Weiss is going to be editor-in-chief of CBS News, but
it's all right. I mean, this is the world we live in now, right? And like people who've just been politicking their whole lives and getting.
And that's Larry Ellison's brother who's buying Paramount more tech money.
There you go. Right. So yeah, pay attention. Like, look for the story behind the story and follow the money. Those are just useful skills in general.
First, we see Sherry Redstone and CBS sucking up to Trump in order to make a merger happen. And then we find out that the merger is David Ellison's money.
Right.
And then it's like, and then you got the worst less famous billionaire brothers are sometimes even worse than the famous billionaires. Another good example. We all know who Warren Buffett is, but his brother Howard is a double bad. He's both a billionaire and a cop.
Oh no, I haven't heard of him.
He actually started a town in central Illinois just so he could be elected sheriff.
Oh boy.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, that is mind-boggling. Yeah.
And so as a result, like one of the biggest police associations in the country is funded by Howard Buffett, and yet everybody thinks the Buffetts are liberal.
Yeah. Again, I think they have like a PR kind of figurehead who can be public, and then the rest of the family can just do their dirty deeds.
Now, here's a fun fact for you. The Pritzkers, of course, were always millionaires, but they became billionaires because Warren Buffett bought their family's hotel business.
Really?
And J.B. Pritzker has had a long personal and professional relationship with cop billionaire Howard Buffett.
Oh, interesting.
And yet J.B. Pritzker is being pushed as one of these left-wing anti-Trump progressive heroes.
Yeah.
And yet, Trump was a hotel billionaire too.
Yeah.
Hotel billionaire versus hotel billionaire.
Oh boy. Yeah.
On that note, on my sort of wrap up thought, if I can get my brain back to where it was, when Alexander and Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson decided they needed to bifurcate America around their political organizations and sort of created our first two-party system, they did it by paying people to start newspapers. And the first truly national American newspapers were propaganda outlets for Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson.
Boy. Yeah.
The National Gazette, which was the Time magazine of its day, was published by Thomas Jefferson's Democratic Republican Party. And when the founder of the National Gazette and Thomas Jefferson had a falling out, he went to work for the Federalist Party and founded the Gazette of the United States of America.
Yeah.
At which point Benjamin Franklin's grandson founded the Aurora for Thomas Jefferson. And so the first newspaper war in American history was dueling political propaganda.
Well, I mean, it's always been cooked into the history, I guess. Yeah.
But Bill Hicks, another great 80s comedian, had a routine where he said that after being elected president, this is my final thought, after being elected president, the new president-elect is invited to a meeting where he has to sit down with all the Fortune 500 CEOs in the country, where they play a video of the JFK assassination that looks suspiciously like that it was recorded from the same angle as the shooter. And then they say to the president-elect, "Any questions?" To which the president-elect replies, "What's my agenda?"
Yep.
Bill Hicks died of cancer.
Yeah.
And this routine was something that he felt like he could say only after he was dying of cancer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, conspiracy theory or not, that describes the way our government works, whether it's literally true or not.
Yes.
And media literacy starts with understanding the truth behind that joke.
Yes. Right. Yes.
And on that note, I want to thank everyone who's been watching this show. I want to thank Vanessa for joining us. I am going to put you on the list of people to come back again to talk about other subjects. This was fun. I hope you want to come back too, because I enjoyed myself.
I do.
Everybody, thank you for watching. You can find this on YouTube at Eclectic Radical. You can support the show on Patreon at Eclectic Radical. You can get this stuff in your mailbox every week on Substack at Eclectic Radical. And you can follow us on Twitter at Eclectic Radical. See how easy I've been trying to make this for you guys? Please help me out by doing something with all that easy information. On that note, you guys have a great week. I will try to be back next week. And until then, we'll tweet at you.